looks like it's happening. After all,
So she's a bit of a fixer-upper.
And
Let it go.
Disney is finally giving us a sequel to Frozen. And after seeing just a few of the scenes from the trailers that recently dropped, Frozen 2 definitely appears to be focusing on Elsa and her learning through her abilities. She has shown to have immense power, and the trailers hint that she might even be stronger than we first thought. But Elsa is not the only one under the Disney banner with superpowers. No, not you. No, not you either. Look, I'm talking about the Incredibles. That's right, the Incredibles, the team consisting of Dash, Mr. Incredible, Violet, and Elastigirl. And since we were talking about people with ice powers, why not include Frozone in the Incredibles as well? But what would happen if Elsa went toe-to-toe with the Incredibles? What if Disney's billion-dollar ice sensation fought against Pixar's superhero family? Now, I know, that seems almost unfair. It's 6 against 1, right? Elsa couldn't possibly defeat those odds. Together, the Incredibles are just not matched. But separately, it's almost a guarantee that Elsa could defeat each and every member of the Incredibles family. Before we go through the fights, however, we should look at Elsa's actual abilities. Elsa has the power to create ice and snow at any moment, transform ice and snow with the wave of a hand, can create living beings out of ice and snow, can manipulate the weather into a cold climate, and can do all of this without even barely breaking a sweat. Hell, according to the short Frozen Fever, Elsa can create those living beings by just accidentally sneezing. So it's difficult to think that there is a limit to her powers, which is the scariest part of her if we're gonna be honest. Anyways, now that we have successfully identified Elsa's key powers, let's go into the battles as Elsa goes toe-to-toe with the Incredibles. However, before we do that, I also want to point out one more thing, and that is that we're not going to include Jack in this conversation. This is because, well, Jack has so many powers, and it's hard to tell what his final powers really are. Right now, there seems to be about 17 of them that has been shown on screen, but we don't know if this is every single power the baby has. Thus, I feel it's almost unfair to really talk about Jack versus Elsa when Jack's powers seem to be kind of unlimited, as well as undecisive. However, if there does come a movie one day where Jack actually has a set power or powers, and the directors are like, boom, this is his actual powers now, no need to freak out about anything, then maybe we'll come back to that argument later. Now with that clarification out of the way, let's get into, in my opinion, one of the more interesting battles in this conversation. That's Elsa versus Frozone. Now, out of all the fights, including the Incredibles team, I believe this battle might be the... I can't believe I wrote this in the script. The coolest. God, I hate myself sometimes. Why did I write that in the script? That was such a stupid idea. Bad puns aside, this battle is actually kind of difficult to predict a winner to. After all, their main powers are that they can produce ice and snow. So, it's kind of an evenly matched fight. However, Frozone loses this battle for one reason. It's a very subtle reason, but if Elsa figures this out, then she could totally use this to turn the tide in her favor. You see, Frozone's main power is the ability to produce ice and snow through his hands. But this doesn't necessarily mean that Frozone can transform pre-existing snow, whereas Elsa has this ability. So Elsa could literally just transform the ice and snow coming out of Frozone and use it against him. If he shoots snow at her, for instance, through his hands, you know, she can then transform that snow into something that can harm him. Say, as one example, Frozone is shooting snow out of his hand. Okay, she can just turn that snow into ice that pierces him. While Frozone is expecting the soft feeling of snow on his hands, he would then feel the piercing ice coursing out of his hands. So imagine like it's shooting snow, but instead of snow, it immediately turns into ice and then pierces his hand. And that idea isn't really that difficult to think up. Hell, as he's shooting the snow, just transform the snow into ice and then an ice cage surrounding him, which leaves him stuck because, again, he can't transform the ice that, is now surrounding him, so he's kind of just stuck in an ice cage. Oh, and before you come at me with the scene of Dash spitting water at him before the spit was turned into ice by Frozone, that's just him freezing pre-existing water. In that scene, you can see him shoot a blast of cold air. So he's not manipulating the properties of the water, he's just simply freezing it with cold air. Oh, and if you want another way that she can win against Frozone, this is kind of just me thinking of the spot here. In The Incredibles, there is a scene where he does need to drink water in order to create ice and snow, so maybe she can just wear him down until he gets thirsty? I don't know, just an idea. But in any case, Elsa defeats Frozone hands down. But now let's move on to the official members of the Incredibles family, starting off with Elastigirl. Now, I don't think I really need to explain myself for this one. If you've seen Incredibles 2, you kind of know what I'm going to say. Elsa literally just has to freeze her, put her in a block of ice, a cold room, a climate in which Elastigirl's powers are unmanageable. So really, Elastigirl's main weakness is Elsa because her powers become unusable when the air is too cold. Like Mr. Fantastic in the Fantastic Four movie, Elastigirl's power to stretch diminishes because of freezing temperatures. Thus, Elsa pretty easily takes the cake for this one as well. So now that we've talked about the mother of the Incredibles family, why don't we move on to the father? It's Mr. Incredible. Now Elsa could just freeze him like she would do with Elastigirl, but that's not necessarily a fun way to have this fight play out. So what about using a previous scene involving Mr. Incredible against him? In the first Incredibles movie, we watched as Robert Parr went on a mission to find out information about Syndrome and his plans. In his escape from the facility, he was crushed by sticky spheres, leaving him trapped as he watched Mirage walk toward him. Well, same logic could kind of apply here. You just have to replace the sticky spheres with ice or snowballs. One could assume that he'd just crush underneath all that pressure. So, another point goes to the one that is not bothered by the cold, but you know who is bothered by it? Violet. That was a dumb segue, but we're rolling with it. Violet is a strange one to pit anyone against. She can turn invisible, leaving her with an advantage of stealth, but her force field ability is a tricky one to really grasp at. I can assume that it does have a limit as we see her almost faint when using the power in this scene against the Omnidroid. Her powers do have a limit when it comes to force and weight, and Elsa could just use this against her teenage opponent. So quite like Mr. Incredible, she could simply crush Violet. And of course she could freeze Violet as well, but again, Violet is really weird when it comes to her force field ability. Her force field ability doesn't seem to have much of a limit on it, except for the fact that it, uses a lot of energy from her, so that's the only real thing I can think of when it comes to a weakness against Violet is just crushing her, which I understand that might be a boring answer, but it's kind of the best thing I could think of. So, Elsa is 4-0 against the Incredibles, and we move on to Dash. He's also a kind of tricky opponent for Elsa. The kid that has literally run on water. Dash is interesting and a difficult match for Elsa, perhaps even the most difficult for Elsa. Dash's main advantage in this fight is his speed, obviously, but also the heat that he creates with said speed. Whatever Elsa could throw at Dash, he could simply melt it just by vibrating really fast. It's absolutely the Captain Cold versus Flash scenario. But unlike Captain Cold, I do believe Elsa can defeat her speedster. Now going into the list of battles, there is something that I really didn't want to do with Elsa when it comes to using her powers in battle. Even though it is tempting, I didn't want to just say that Elsa creates a massive army of snow creatures like Marshmallow. But when it comes to Dash, this is kind of the best way I see Elsa defeating him. Like I mentioned, Dash's kinetic energy could hypothetically just melt everything Elsa threw at him. So she could go with the Elastigirl route, however, I don't think freezing him would necessarily get the job done because he can just vibrate really quickly. She could try to go the Mr. Incredible / Violet route, however, crushing him doesn't seem like the best strategy because, again, he could just move really quickly and get out of anything. So an army of ice creatures that are simultaneously attacking Dash while he melts them might be the best bet for Elsa. And thus, Elsa could defeat any of the Incredibles family, excluding Jack because I don't know how to handle Jack. Okay, Jack is a difficult superhero to pit against anybody. Now I know that there are plenty of ways these fights could conclude, perhaps even having Elsa lose some of these fights. But these are a few of the ways I believe Elsa could actually defeat the Incredibles in a non-boring manner. So now I kind of want to put the question on to you. How do you think these scenarios could play out between Elsa and the various members of the Incredibles family? Please let me know in the comments. I don't typically, do that, but I am curious for this one. However, through all those battles with the Incredibles, I think there's one thing that is certain. The one person in the Incredibles universe that I never in a million years could see Elsa defeating is Frozone's wife after she kills him.
Evening's in danger!
You tell me what I saw this woman! We are talking about the greater good!
Greater good! I am your wife! I'm the greatest good you are ever gonna get!
Anyways, that's gonna have to be the end of this video here. Did you guys like it? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more of my over-analytic and dorky content, why not check out this video here? And while you're staring at this outro screen, why not click this little subscribe button? Anyways, hope you have a good day, and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye! Yo.